Good morning, everyone. My name is Benjamin Duro. I'm a geologist working at Eliis. So today I'm gonna talk about the automatic fault extraction, okay, or what we call the AFE. So I'm gonna be the main presenter. Normally Sven Philip should be around, so I guess he'll pop up in a minute. So he's gonna be the one asking all the questions. So I don't know if you are familiar with Livestorm, but actually, so we have a chat part, okay, where you can just chat all together. We have a question part, so this is where you can type all the questions. Please feel free to ask any questions, okay? Sven is gonna answer them if I have time, because he's still not there. If I have time, I will just answer all the questions. We might send some polls from time to time, and if you want to see all the registrants, you can just go on the people tab. So first of all, I'm gonna start with a short presentation, okay, a short PowerPoint, and then I will move on to the live demo. So first of all, sorry, I'm just gonna turn off my cam because otherwise it's gonna slow down the bandwidth. So first of all, what is PaleoScan? So PaleoScan is an application made for seismic interpretation. Okay, so the idea is to input a couple of objects such as seismic, horizons, and faults. And then once we input all these objects, PaleoScan is about to create what we call the model grid. So this is just a grid made of nodes and patches, and PaleoScan will link all the patches to create horizons. Then the interpreter has to QC all these horizons in order to create what we call the geomodel. And once we have this geomodel, we can then move on to the next step, which is the prospect evaluation. So for the ones who know PaleoScan, you can see that PaleoScan is very useful, especially in exploration, because we can deal with a large amount of data in a short amount of time. Okay, so for prospect evaluation, exploration, this is just a very nice tool. And we are trying to go more into the static model, but this is in the near future. So just to go back to the model grid, actually, you can see that seismic horizons and faults are very important, and especially faults, because actually, if we don't include faults into the model grid, PaleoScan might do some wrong connections. So PaleoScan will make some mistake, okay? And when we include the faults into the model grid, PaleoScan will stop the propagation against the faults. So this will prevent PaleoScan from making mistake. We know that picking some faults might be a labor. So that's why we're trying to make it automatic. So we find a way of doing this, and I'm gonna not talk about it right now. So for the ones who know PaleoScan, so PaleoScan is made of a core application, okay, and add-on modules. So add-on modules are made more for further interpretation, but actually the automatic fault extraction is part of the core application. Okay, so everything I'm about to show now, if you have a PaleoScan license, you will have access to it. So basically, the automatic fault extraction is a 3-step workflow, okay? So we start from the seismic, and from the seismic, the idea is to create the fault plane volume. So this is the first step. So to create the fault plane volume, actually, PaleoScan is going to create first the variance, but unfortunately, the user cannot control the variance parameters, okay? This is kind of a black box where PaleoScan creates the variance, and from the variance, PaleoScan creates the fault plane. So this is the first step. The thing is, in the fault plane, the faults can be several pixels wide. So because of this wide information, PaleoScan cannot really know where to put the fault plane. So to help PaleoScan to know where the location of the fault plane is, actually the idea is to thin it. So we're going to use a gradient, and we're going to keep only the maximum values along the fault. This way, we're going to have a fault made of one single pixel, okay, and we're going to have no value elsewhere. So this is the second step, okay, and once we have thinned the fault plane, the idea is to extract the faults. So we say that this is the labeling step because PaleoScan is going to take a look at all the azimuth, the dip, and is going to label the faults. So PaleoScan will extract thousands of faults patches, okay? And then we have tools to filter all these faults. So if I go more into details for the fault plane concept, so like I said, the idea is to input a seismic, and from the seismic, PaleoScan will generate first the variance cube. So basically, in the variance step, PaleoScan is going to insert what we call a disk, okay, for every single pixel. And PaleoScan will make this disk spin for every azimuth with a degrees. And for every single azimuth, PaleoScan will make the disk spin with a dip of 5 degrees, okay? And PaleoScan will do it for every single pixel. And where PaleoScan has the maximum variance average along the disk, this means that this is the most likely position or location of the fault. So this step takes a lot of time, okay? We have to count between 1 hour to 2 hours per giga, okay? So this step is really, really time consuming. So you have to be aware of it before starting the computation. And then once PaleoScan has done this, PaleoScan generates the fault plane. So from the seismic, we get one single output, which is the fault plane. So this is the fault plane here in time slice. Okay, so you can see that the fault here is several pixels wide. Okay, so the idea to narrow it down to 1 pixel, the idea will be to use a gradient. Okay, and PaleoScan is gonna keep the highest value along this gradient. This way, we're gonna have no data elsewhere, so it's gonna be way easier for PaleoScan to put a fault plane here. So this step is really fast, actually. So here is a brief example, okay, with the seismic data located offshore Australia. So this is the Exmouth basin. So basically here we can see some faults. So the first step, like I said, is to create the variance cube. Okay, so for every single pixel, we are going to make the disk spin, okay, with a step of 15 degrees in azimuth and a step of 5 degrees in dip. This will give us the fault plane. So you can see that here the faults are a couple of pixels wide. So we are going to thin it. This way we just narrow it down to 1 pixel. Okay, and once we have this, PaleoScan is going to extract all the faults. So we can end up with thousands of faults, and then we have to filter them out. So for instance, you can see that maybe we can remove some of the faults here. We can merge other faults in here, for instance. So this is a further step. But for instance, we can filter the faults. We have a specific tool for this. It's called a Stereonet. And thanks to this Stereonet, actually, we can sort the faults regarding their dip and azimuth. So for instance, here, if I just take a look at the red parameters, I would say, we have sorted the fault with a northeast, southwest azimuth, okay, but just with a single dip, which is dipping north westward. We have done the same with the blue network here. So it's the same azimuth, okay? Northeast, southwest, but this time the faults are dipping southeastwards. And we have a yellow network with a single azimuth, okay, which is northwest, southeast azimuth, but this time we kept both dips, okay? So you can just create as many network as you want. So this way is pretty easy to use to filter the faults out. Once we have the faults, actually, the idea will be to include them into the relative geographical time model conception. So we are going to include the fault into the model grid. So the idea here, so we have a seismic. So the idea is to create a model grid, okay? So we are going to create a lot of nodes. For every single node, we are going to create a patch. So a patch looks like this. And then PaleoScan is going to link all the patches to create horizons. So when you have quite a distant throw with bright events, PaleoScan manages quite well to link the pieces here without making a mistake. It works pretty fine in here. But if you go deeper, you can see that the signal is getting dimmer and dimmer. And actually, there is a perfect throw connecting this peak here with this peak and this trough with this trough. And it's in such a case, PaleoScan makes mistake basically. So to prevent this, the idea is to include the faults within the grid. So PaleoScan won't put any patches in here, and PaleoScan will stop the propagation against the faults. So that's why it is pretty important to include the faults at this step here. Okay. So so this was just a brief introduction, okay, about the AFE and why do we need faults within PaleoScan. So I'm just gonna go through a live demo now. So I'm gonna display PaleoScan. So I hope you can all see PaleoScan. So basically, the AFE is available from different modules. Okay, so if we go under the module, the volume module, if we click on the first icon, we have access to the list of attributes, and you can see that the first attributes we can create are the AFE. So basically, with this way here of computing the AFE, we name the outputs. This means that if we want to create the fault plane volume, we have to start from the seismic. Okay. If we want to create the fault thinning volume, we have to start from the fault plane volume. And if we want to go through the fault extraction process, then we have to start from the fault thinning. Okay. So now, because I want to start from scratch, I have to create the fault plane volume, okay, and PaleoScan opens this interface here. But actually, if you're getting lost, okay, in PaleoScan, you don't know where to start, actually, we can also start this workflow from the fault module. So we have a specific icon here with AFE, okay, standing for automatic fault extraction. If I click on this icon here, you can see now we have the same options here, but this time instead of naming the outputs, we name the inputs. So if I want to start from scratch, I have to start from the seismic, and at this step here, PaleoScan will create the fault plane. Okay, the fault plane. Sorry. Or you can start from the fault plane. At this step, PaleoScan will create the fault thinning. Okay. And if you want to start from the fault thinning, then PaleoScan will extract the fault. But if I click on the from seismic here to create the fault plane, you can see that PaleoScan is going to open the same interface as the other one. Okay, basically PaleoScan is going to use the same algorithm. So it doesn't matter if you start from the fault module or from the volume module. Okay, it's going to use the same algorithm. So here I'm just going to close this one because I don't need to have both of them. Again, if you're not really familiar with the AFE, so we have a short explanation here. Okay, seeing that the fault plane starts from a seismic volume. Okay, so if I want, I can drop my seismic volume in here. And on the right-hand side of this interface, you can see that we have a couple of parameters to check. So basically now I'm just going to talk about the parameters. So the first thing to know running this this fault plane cube actually is it takes a lot of time. Like I said, between 1 hour to 2 hours per giga. So to reduce this time, actually, we have implemented a new tool. Okay, so this is brand new in the 2020 version, where actually we can filter the faults in azimuth. Actually, we are going to limit the disk. So instead of making the disk spin for every single azimuth, we are going to bound it. So for instance, if I display the time slice in here, I can just enable this option here, and I can ask PaleoScan to make the disk spin in a certain direction. Okay, this way PaleoScan won't make the disk spin for this azimuth here and this azimuth here. Okay, so we're gonna save some time. And actually we can do the same in inline for the dip. Okay, if you don't want PaleoScan to run the disk for a certain dip, for instance, you can just play with it as well. Okay, so you really have the control on the orientation of the disk and its dip. So this is quite useful because you can save a lot of time. If you want to get back to how it was before, you can just click on this icon here, and PaleoScan will reset everything. So if I just go back to the time slice, for instance, for some reason, sometimes it's not easy to spot the fault in the seismic. So instead of displaying the seismic, what you can do here is you can drop, for instance, a specific attribute. Okay, for instance, here I have dropped my similarity, where it is a bit easier to display the faults. And I can also do the same with this tool here. Okay. So if I do it this way, basically, it's not a big deal. I can just display this attribute here, okay? And then if I want, I can just put back the seismic here, and PaleoScan is gonna keep the same parameter for the filter, okay? So you don't have to redo this every time. So if I just show you what it looks like. So basically, here is the fault plane volume I have run with the entire set of values, and here is the same one, but this time I have limited the azimuth to almost the north-south direction. And you can see here that PaleoScan, because I have asked it to focus on the north-south direction, PaleoScan didn't pick the east-west trend. Okay, so thanks to this, I have saved a couple of hours. Okay, I will get back to it because it is also useful for another tool, but I will get back to it. So this is the first, parameter you can play with, and you can save a couple of hours thanks to this. So I would just put it back to normal. So the second parameter to check is the scanning disk weighting. So here we have two options to choose from. So the first option is Gaussian, the Gaussian method, or the flat method. So basically, the Gaussian method is when we're going to use the disk, okay? The scanning disk is going to be weighted radially with a maximum weight at its center, okay? So PaleoScan will give less weight on its edges. And if we use the flat method, PaleoScan is going to weight, similarly on its whole surface. So the thing is that the flat method is useful because you can save some time as well, okay? So I'm going to show you the differences, okay, between the flat and the Gaussian method. So this is the flat method, and here is the Gaussian method, okay, with the same parameters. So here I'm just changing only the methods. So if I just zoom in around here, you can see, so on the left-hand side, this is the Gaussian method, okay, we can read it here in the title, and on the right-hand side, this is the flat method. So basically, you can see that the Gaussian methods is a bit cleaner, okay, in regards to the flat method. Both methods works really fine, actually, when it comes to the major faults. So if you want to be fast, actually, you can just use the flat method. The only thing is, if you have some dimmer events, actually, you're going to have a lot of noise in the flat, using the flat methods. So we would recommend to use the Gaussian methods if you have some weak events and where the signal is going dimmer. You're going to have a better result with the Gaussian methods. The other thing is, you can see that if we take this fault here, for instance, with the Gaussian methods, PaleoScan manages quite well to highlight it, okay, almost in just one shot. It seems it is just one single fault. If you take a look at it with the flat methods, PaleoScan might extract, for instance, two patches, okay, one patch here and another one patch here. So at the end, you will have to link them up. So you're going to have access to the same faults, okay, just that you're going to have more patches to deal with at the end, so it might be even more time consuming. But again, this is data driven, so of course it always depends on your data. Okay, so this is the main difference here between the flat and the Gaussian methods. So for the rest of the computation, I would just move on with the Gaussian method because I think it is more relevant for this data here. The next parameter to play with is the scanning disk size. So the scanning disk size actually is, well, the size of the disk we're going to use, okay? So basically, if we use a low value, we're going to use a small disk. So this disk is going to be more, it's going to be more, well, sensitive to the variance. And if you use a bigger disk size, PaleoScan is going to average everything. So PaleoScan will focus on the major faults. So here, for the values, we can go up to 1 pixel. Okay, so this is the tiniest disk we can get, up to 401 pixels. So if I just run it with different pixel size, so in here, so I did use a low value. Okay, so I'm just gonna link all them up. So in here, I have used a low value. Okay, you can see I've used a disk size of 51 pixels. In here, I have used a medium value, 201 pixels. And in here, I have used a high value. So you can see that when we use a low value, PaleoScan is really sensitive to the seismic. Okay, if I display the seismic here, where it becomes more blurry or chaotic, PaleoScan picks a lot of faults. Okay, so it is nice at the end because you're going to have a lot of data, but you might have too many faults. Okay, you might end up with thousands of faults, so it's going to be a nightmare for the user to handle such amounts of faults. So then you can try to increase the bits, and if you play with a disk with a medium value, you can see that PaleoScan manages to highlight the main fault, so it is quite okay for me, I guess, for this data. And if you play with a higher value, with a maximum value of 401 pixels, actually PaleoScan really focus on the major faults, on the major variance, I would say, major discontinuities. And the second fault, the second network is kind of dimming away. So I think for this kind of data, again, it is better to use the medium value. But again, it depends on the outputs you wanna have. So just keep in mind that if you use a low value here for the disk, PaleoScan is going to be very sensitive to the variations, and if you increase this disk size, PaleoScan is going to average everything, so you're going to focus on the major faults. Then we have to play with the normalization. So the normalization actually is very useful because when we go deeper, because of the low frequency content, PaleoScan is gonna highlight a lot of variance. So basically, if we use the normalization, the data seems pretty good, okay? And if I use the same parameter but without the normalization, actually you can see that around the sort disappear because we have a lot of variance. Actually, PaleoScan picks a lot of faults here, so we have high values here, and in comparison to these high values, these faults here are kind of fading away, so PaleoScan won't be able to extract them, or otherwise we're going to have to use a really low value when it comes to the extraction, and PaleoScan might extract everything else. So the normalization here again is brand new. Okay, this is a new feature coming in the 2020 version, and it is very useful because you can see that it really highlights the faults instead of highlighting where we have a maximum value, a maximum variance. Sorry, maybe due to the low frequency content. Then actually, so this was for the fault plane computation. Okay, so once we have the fault plane computation, okay, which is this output here, you can see that faults are a couple of pixels wide. So the idea then will be to use a gradient, okay, to thin this volume in order to keep the maximum value along the fault plane. So if I just display time slice, so my fault plane cube looks like this. So basically here for the thinning method, so if I just target yes to create it, actually we have two methods. We have a direct method and a Hessian method. So basically the direct method, we're gonna use just a single derivative, okay? And the Hessian method, we're gonna use a second derivative. So if I just show you the main difference in time slice. So this is the data I'm gonna use as an input. So if I use the Hessian method, it's gonna look like this, and the direct method will look like this. So if I just display now the time slice, up. Actually, so in the 2019 version, we were using the Hessian method, okay, which is on the left-hand side, okay, here, and on the right-hand side is the direct method. So the direct method is brand new for the 2020 version, and actually we have developed this method because if you take a look in time slices, you can see that because of the second derivative, the faults are kind of not continuous, okay? If I take a look at this bright fault here, okay, if I take a look in the fault plane, this fault is really bright here. PaleoScan manages to highlight very well. But if I take a look in the Hessian method, PaleoScan, because of the second derivative, PaleoScan removes data in here and here. So as a result, instead of having one nice fault here made of one single patch, PaleoScan will create like 1, 2, 3, and maybe 4 patches for one single fault. So to make it easier for the user, the idea is to just use the first derivative, okay? And this way the faults are going to be much more continuous, okay? So instead of having a fault made of 4 patches, we're going to have a fault made of one single patch, which is much easier. But the thing is, in some places, if I just go back to the inline, sorry, actually, in some places where we have kind of dim seismic or not bright events, you can set if we use the direct methods. Now it's the other way around. With the direct methods, the faults is kind of discontinuous, okay, in regards to the Hessian method. So again, this data or this process is data driven. So I'm not saying that the Hessian method always works better in regard to the direct methods. It really depends on the data. But for this data here, you can see that in an inline direction, the Hessian method works better. And if we take a look in time slices, the direct method worked better. Because, yeah, the faults were more continuous. So basically here, because I want to have continuous faults in the inline direction, because I think it's easier to merge the faults in a time slice direction, I won't recommend to use the Hessian method for this data set here. So I'm just going to close the direct method and keep moving with the Hessian method. The second parameter for the faults thinning actually is the window size. So the window size is related to the size of the gradients we are going to use. For instance, let's say I'm going to take this data here, for instance, this time slice. So if I use, for instance, a low value for the gradients, so let's say my gradient is this long here, PaleoScan, well, sorry, I'm going to do it in here, it's going to be more relevant. Oops, sorry, time slice. Yep, I'm going to do it in here. So, for instance, if I use a low gradient, okay, a low value for the gradients here, PaleoScan is gonna move this gradient along the fault plane, and PaleoScan will keep the maximum value. Okay. Then once it has done it along this fault, PaleoScan will move the gradient to the next fault, to the same. We move the gradient to the next fault and to the same. The thing is, if you increase the size of the gradient, PaleoScan is gonna cross more and more faults. And along this gradient, PaleoScan is able to keep just one single value. So, for instance, if I use this gradient here, PaleoScan, instead of keeping 2 values here for these 2 faults, PaleoScan is going to keep just one single value here. And if I keep increasing these gradients, I will display less and less faults. Okay? So that's why, actually, for some reason, sometimes, it is nice to use a higher gradient. For instance, in here, if you don't want to have this artifact here, maybe it is nice to use a decent gradient size. So this way, PaleoScan will just keep this fault here. But if you use a big value, which is too high, then you're just going to miss some faults. So here, so the minimum value is 1, and the maximum value is 15 pixels. So if I just show you the results when you use different values, so here's the 3, here comes the same with the 9 pixel gradients, and here comes with the 15 gradients. So I'm just gonna link them up, display them in time slice. Okay, so now if we zoom in, so basically you can see that so on the left hand side is a 3 pixels gradient size. Okay, in the middle one is the medial gradient size with a 9 pixels, and here on the right hand side is the longest gradient, 15 pixels. So you can see that when I use a low value, you can see that PaleoScan highlights a lot of faults. Okay, so the major faults plus some artifacts due to the disk, maybe sometimes. And if I increase the gradients, now this tiny artifact here, PaleoScan is getting rid of them. And if I just keep increasing the gradients, PaleoScan is going to focus really on a major fault. So I'm just going to keep the major faults. Okay, so again, it depends on where you are in your workflow. Okay, if you are, for instance, more into the exploration part, then you might want to focus really on the major faults. So you might increase these gradients. But for instance, if you are working more into the production part and development, maybe it is better to have a maximum number of faults, okay, even the subtle ones. So in such a case, you might want to decrease this gradient size, okay, to highlight all the faults. So for this representation, I'm gonna keep, let's say, the medium one, okay, because I want to, keep maximum faults here. And finally, once we have found the best parameters, the last step is to do the faults extraction, okay? So for the faults extraction, again, we have a couple of parameters to check. So the first parameter is the minimum dimension. So this means that to extract the faults have to cross at least 2,000 voxels. Okay, so you're gonna keep decent faults. If you want to focus on the smallest faults, you can decrease it, for instance. And when you decrease this value, of course, you're gonna extract more and more faults. Okay. So for instance, if I show you this, so I'm just gonna close, I have too many windows. So for instance, here, I will show you the difference between a fault of 600 voxels and a fault of 2,000 voxels. So I have extracted the fault. So if I just open the 3D viewer, I'm gonna drop the faults, okay? So made of, with a minimum size of 600 voxels. So by the way, you can see that actually when PaleoScan automatically extracts the fault, PaleoScan here generated 3 different fault sets. This is because PaleoScan is limited in terms of fault within a single fault set. PaleoScan cannot put, for the automatic extraction, PaleoScan cannot put more than 2,000 faults within a fault set. So that's why PaleoScan is going to create as many fault sets as needed. Okay. So if I expand the faults here, you will see the number of faults the PaleoScan has extracted. So you can see it takes quite a long time because we have quite a lot of faults. Okay, so if I just expand here, so you can see that for the first fault set, PaleoScan has almost 1,500 faults, almost 1,200 faults, and 1,200 faults for the third one. So so it's a total of almost 4,000 faults. Okay, so you can see here all the faults. So it is quite a lot of them. And basically, so how does PaleoScan creates the fault set. So to create a fault set, like I said, PaleoScan is limited. It can go up to 2,000 faults per set. So if you have more than 2,000 faults in your survey, PaleoScan is gonna take the shortest, the shortest distance and cut it in two. So PaleoScan is gonna keep here up. So sorry. So here, so the longest distance is this one here, the inline. So he's gonna cut it in two, and he's gonna create a first fault set in here, because here we have less than 2,000 faults. Then he's gonna do the same for the second part. If we have less than 2,000 faults, then PaleoScan is gonna create one second fault set. But because we have more than 2,000 faults in here, PaleoScan is gonna take the longest distance in here, cut it in two, creates a second fault set in here, and it's gonna do it for every single piece, okay, of the survey. So that is how PaleoScan kind of decimates the fault sets. So yeah, you can see that we have here around almost 4,000 faults. And if I do the same, but this time I'm gonna use the faults. So instead of setting a parameter of 600 voxels, I will set a parameter to 2,000 voxels. I'm gonna ask PaleoScan to extract only bigger faults. So I can set now we have almost 800 faults. Okay, and the fault looks like this. So we have way less faults, almost 4 times less faults. So it is much more manageable for the user. So if I just show you in a Seismic, so here are the faults, okay, with a minimum size of 2,000 voxels. Okay, and if I just remove them, here are the faults with the minimum size of 6,000 voxels. So you can see that we have way more faults. So it might be a bit a struggle at the beginning for the user to handle such amount of faults. Okay, so that's why for the rest I'm gonna stick to this parameter here, 2,000 faults, which seems quite decent for me. Then the second parameter to play with is the minimum thinning value. So to explain it, I'm gonna go back to the fault extraction. It's gonna be easier in here, and I'm gonna start here from the thinning here. And actually, so, sorry. So the second parameter here, the minimum thinning value, is related to the values of this specific attribute here. So I'm just gonna change the color bar. It's gonna be easier to explain it. So actually, you can see that with this thinning value here, the values go from 0 to 0.17. So this is really low values. And when I increase or decrease this value here, PaleoScan, so this is basically a threshold where PaleoScan won't extract faults below this threshold. So if I, for instance, choose a threshold of 0.1, let's say, PaleoScan is going to extract only the white to black values, okay? If I increase this minimum thinning value, I will ask PaleoScan to extract the faults with a maximum confidence, okay, within this thinning value. So as a result, if I increase this minimum thinning value, I will ask PaleoScan to now extract the fault from gray to black. So PaleoScan is gonna get rid of the entire blue selection here, okay, just to focus on the gray to black faults. So I can show you this. So now if I drop this fault set, so in here I have used, a value of minimum thinning of 0.01, which was a low value. So you can see PaleoScan extracted quite a lot of faults. And if I increase this value to 0.03, so I ask PaleoScan to be very, very, not permissive, I would say. You can set now PaleoScan just extracted the fault with a high value in a thinning cube. So the fault with a high probability of being here and correct. Okay, so maybe here 0.03 is too high, so I'm just gonna stick to this fault here. I think it is a bit more relevant. And the last option we have for the fault extraction actually is the auto merge. So for the auto merge, actually, PaleoScan is going to look at the tip of the fault, okay? And he's gonna look at the coplanarity of the fault. So if the faults are coplanar, then PaleoScan is going to merge them. But PaleoScan, don't worry, PaleoScan is pretty safe, okay? It won't merge everything. So I have tested it again. So if I just display a time slice in here, so I'm gonna drop the auto merge. So basically, between the auto merge and the next one I'm gonna show you, I have used exactly the same parameters. Only the auto merge was different. Okay, and actually, you can see that we have some nice faults in here. Okay, and if I select all the faults and split them to show you what PaleoScan has merged. So I'm gonna click on the minus here to split all the faults. So you can see, so in red are the faults that PaleoScan, okay, didn't merge. And in thick and colored segments, these are all the faults that PaleoScan has merged, okay, by itself. So you can say PaleoScan doesn't go too crazy. Okay, PaleoScan does quite a good job, basically. So by using the auto merge, actually we won't take a big risk, okay, because PaleoScan is quite safe. Okay, PaleoScan won't merge crazy stuff. For instance, here you can see that we have several faults, but PaleoScan didn't merge them, okay, because I think he thinks that maybe it was not safe enough. So PaleoScan is gonna merge only the safest patches. So using this tool, you can just save quite a lot of time. And so, for instance, now we have quite a lot of faults. For instance, the idea would be to use the Stereonet to filter them. So let's say, for instance, if we didn't use the auto merge, or even if you did use the auto merge but you still have too many faults, the idea will be to use the Stereonet, okay, to filter the faults. So I'm gonna use it, okay, like this. So here is my 3D viewer. Okay. So actually, for the Stereonet, it is quite easy to use. So I'm just gonna remove all the other faults. fault sets, so it's going to be easier and faster to navigate through. So yeah, you can set, because we have quite a huge amount of faults, everything takes longer. Okay, so we have all the faults in here. And so basically we have different parameters to set. So the first, well, not parameters, but options. So the first option is, do you want to filter the faults regarding their azimuth in here or dip? So let's say we're gonna play with the azimuth. Okay, so you can just take the yellow dot here, move it around, take the entire slice here, move it around like this. And for instance, in here, PaleoScan is gonna keep the north-south direction. Okay, so this is the first way of filtering the faults. Okay, so you can just use the Stereonet, north-south direction, or east-west direction, for instance. You can also sort the faults regarding their dip. So if you do it the same way, actually, you can click on the dip direction, and this time is going to be a rotation of 90 degrees, okay, more or less. But the thing is, once you have these faults here, PaleoScan is going to use the filtering here for both dips, okay, because we have two slices here. So if I want, I can just keep one single dip. If I want to keep the fault dipping eastward, for instance, I can do it this way. Or if I want the fault dipping westward, for instance, I can just move it to the other side, and I'm going to have the fault dipping westward or dipping northward, for instance. Okay, so this is quite a nice tool to filter the faults. And actually, this tool is pretty useful. Then for the next step, if you want to merge the faults, because of course here, by doing so, of course, so you can just first filter all the faults. And if you want to merge the faults, you can of course select the faults and click on the plus here to merge the fault. And PaleoScan is going to connect these pieces. But actually, we also have a tool to kind of automatically merge the faults. So if we click on the plus here, it's called the auto merge. And this tool is based on the displayed faults. So in here, you're going to have access to the list of the faults that PaleoScan is willing to merge. Okay, and this list is based on the Stereonet. So if you want to narrow it down, for instance, you can just reduce this, and you can set the list again will be reduced. Okay, so if you just want to be safe, you can do it this way. And then if you want, you can, so you're going to have access to different 3D viewers. Okay, you can hit preview if you want to have access to a preview, even in 3D. Okay, it's going to be this green faults here. And if you want to do it, you can just click on merge, and PaleoScan will merge the faults. So this tool is pretty interesting because you won't have to go through the entire faults. You can just set some parameters in here, and then you can play with the Stereonet, with the fault merge assistant to merge the faults if you want. So preview, check the faults in here, in the Seismic, and click on merge. And of course, once you have done this, the idea will be to save the fault. So if you reset the entire Stereonet, then you will be able to play with all the faults, or you will be able to display all the faults. Okay, and so once you have all the faults, you can then save them. Welcome all, for instance, click on OK, and PaleoScan will create a new fault set in here. And of course, this fault set is going to be then useful for the creation of the model grid. Okay, so you can just always drop it in here. So I'm going to use the Seismic here. And of course, for instance, the faults in PaleoScan are pretty useful because, for instance, when we run so yeah, I won't explain the grid parameters because this is not part of this demo. Okay, but the thing is, if I generate a grid, for instance, and then try to highlight some horizons, we might have some wrong connections. Okay, so I'm just trying to, okay. So here you can see we have some wrong connections, okay, because we didn't insert the faults as an input for the grid. So to prevent this, the idea is to include a fault set, okay. Then I'm gonna run again the grid. So this time PaleoScan is gonna take into account the faults I have used. And this time, this way PaleoScan will stop the propagation against the fault. So this will prevent PaleoScan from doing some wrong connections. And then you can, of course, add your own connections. Okay, so the faults here are pretty useful for the grid. So I'm just gonna go back to the PowerPoint. So you can see that so the AFE is a 3-step workflow. Okay, so the first step is to create the fault plane. Okay, so coming from the seismic. Then the idea will be to thin it. Okay, so we are going to create a fault thin cube. Okay, we're going to create a new cube, and this comes from the fault plane. And then we're going to extract all the faults, so it comes from the fault thinning. Of course, so here we have seen different methods, but this is data dependent. This is data driven. So don't take these parameters for granted, okay? The idea is to really test all the parameters based on your data, and you will have different results. The thing is, keep in mind that the fault plane, the fault plane cube takes a lot of time. Okay, this step here takes really a lot of time, between 1 hour to 2 hours per giga. Okay, and these 2 steps here are really fast. I'm talking about couple of seconds per giga. Okay, for the fault thinning, and a couple of minutes for the fault extraction. So these 2 steps are really fast. Of course, other volumes can be used, okay, as an input. You don't have to stick to the fault plane, fault thinning of PaleoScan, okay? If you have your own attributes, for instance, we know that some customers have their own fault likelihood or fault probability attributes. So if you want to use these as an input for the fault thinning or for the fault extraction, please feel free to do so. Because you can save a lot of time. Okay, if you don't have to compute the fault plane cube, you're gonna save hours or days. Okay. Please, and if you do so, please feel free to give us some feedback to see if it works pretty fine. Because we can have a lot of faults, we have a specific tool to filter them out. Okay, it's called the Stereonet, so don't hesitate to play with it. And the Stereonet is also pretty useful because it's going to help you out for the automatic fault merging. Okay, and the faults can also be used for the model grid as an input, and this is quite recommended because it will prevent PaleoScan from making mistake. Okay, so I would like to thank you for attending this presentation. I hope you liked it. If you have any questions or comments or feedback to give us, feel free to do so. This webinar has been recorded, so it will be available as video if you want to see it again. And so here are our contacts. Okay, don't hesitate to contact us for any questions. So thank you very much for being here, and maybe see you next time. Bye-bye.